Hello, my name is Dan Johnson and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about The Timeless Children. It's been a year since the episode came out and it's eluded me ever since. I think I've seen it 5 times at this point, and I've had mixed emotions each time. I've hated it, I've liked it, I've tolerated it, I've found bits that I like and dislike. You know, I've been in the middle, I've been every single place that a reviewer could be when it comes to an episode, and I'm still undecided. If you looked at the internet back in March, and I think it's basically still the same now, the internet landscape concerning Doctor Who was basically about the Timeless Children, but it was not the episode as a whole. It was about just the arc stuff. It was a question that you'd ask each other was, what do you think on the Timeless Children, not what did you think of the episode, if that makes sense. In my review, a very clean-shaven and naive me talking about the episode, and I tried to talk about every aspect of it, but there's an awful lot to break down and I don't think I've really done it justice. And today I'm going to be talking about it, but first I wanted to put a kind of ban on the Timeless Children arc. So I want to do a review but without talking about the arc, because I'm talking about the episode itself being fundamentally broken and kind of ignoring the arc stuff. I think I'm probably going to talk about all three episodes because they kind of go together. You know, the Haunting of Dati, Ascension of the Cyberman, and of course the episode. And I feel like I need to do this because they're supposed to be a 3-parter on the levels of Utopia, The Sound of the Drums, and The Last of the Time Lords. That kind of level. They're looking for the Monk trilogy or something like that. You know, that kind of epic sort of 3-part story, but I don't think they achieved that, and that is because I think that the distribution. I think the episode as a 3 are really badly paced, and I've labelled it out in this graph. But there are a whole bunch of things that it introduced, dropped, don't become very interesting, all that kind of stuff. I mean, I will probably put a whole list of them down in the description of the ones that I found, because I think that some of them are a bit nitpicky and probably wouldn't be very interesting, and it's a terrible way to display a video anyways, just me listing stuff. First one is Brendan. Now, he was the biggest bait. In fact, I think he was more of a betrayal to the audience, because it's very clear from Ascension of the Cyberman that he's important and there's really some purpose to that, but then that doesn't continue into the next part. But then it gets to the point when, and this is the betrayal, where Brendan dies, falls off the cliff, similar to how it happens in The Timeless Children, falls off the cliff, lands, but then gets back up, doesn't regenerate. The question was, why didn't they change their face? Was he the base plate for, you know, everything else? You know, it was betraying us as much as it was teasing us. So I have 2 points concerning Ashad. So the first point is that the whole reality bomb thing, you know, the little plot device he has, the death particle within his chest, is not mentioned at all in the 2 episodes we have him for, where he's like the main villain. You know, there's no master or anything, so he's the big guy, and they don't mention that he has a particle in his chest the entire time, or what his plan is, or anything like that, so it comes across as very weird when they're all like, yeah, the death particle, don't you know about the death particle? Personally, I feel like that makes the episode seem unplanned, because there's no consistency, and I think that's a big issue that will keep popping up in the other points. My second point with Ashad, again, goes back to the idea of consistency, and that is that we have this idea of what he is, you know, who he was before, talking about how he, you know, killed his family kind of thing. Very dark stuff, very interesting for a Cyberman, an interesting idea in Ashad. There's the potential for it, and he gets shrunk. There's no hope for survival. There's no rebelling against the machine. There's nothing like that. It's just like he becomes a plot device for the final episode. Actually, I've got a third one for Ashad, but it's kind of like a Cyberman in general one. So the Cybermen, their plan, their grand scheme, is to become fully metal. Now, I don't know if Chibnall ever looked at what a Cyberman was and their ideas and things like that behind it, but I mean, I've talked a lot about Cybermen because they're my favourite villains, and I've talked about why I like them. I talk about the ideas of uniformity, body horror, all that kind of stuff. Real metallic imprisonment. And Chibnall seems to have just forgotten all of that. A lot of other things that had potential and felt like they had promised to return in the finale but never did. Not properly anyway. Jack, for example, how did he know about the lone Cyberman? All that kind of stuff, when it just turns out that he was turning in the next episode, not the episode beforehand. So why did he mention the lone Cyberman if he wasn't going to help her? Now, Ruth is a really cool idea, and I feel like even though they're probably going to develop it in things such as the 60th and Series 13, it feels like she was purposely put there for the continuation into the finale, for us then to kind of be baited again. It feels like such a big reveal, and then they didn't use it in the finale, which is about the Time of Children, which is like her stuff, and she wasn't there. Well, I mean, she was, but like only for like a minute, and she wasn't really there. It's just the Matrix. My next one is a bit backwards, and that's the idea of Gallifrey. Now, Moffat used a lot of his run to kind of use Gallifrey in an interesting way, to bring it back, and all that kind of stuff, so it could be used and utilised and all that kind of stuff. And I wasn't quite sure where it was at the end of his run. But Chibnall's first act with Gallifrey was to destroy it again, which seems like a backward step. And then once he's done that, they have the whole episode set there, which is a lovely aesthetic, but just feels like a waste. And, you know, the destruction of Gallifrey feels like it should be this momentous occasion that is devoted time to, but it isn't. And that also is a common thread within all this stuff. Of course, we also have the Cybermasters. Now, again, these things are so wasted in this episode. They had so much potential. I think they're a pretty cool idea. They're a bit fan fiction. They're a little bit silly, but I think that they could be a cool idea. If they were given the time, they could be developed into a really cool villain. In fact, a lot of these ideas that Chibnall throws around could be used as a very cool plot. I mean, Gallifrey destruction, I mean, we've seen it before, but it works, doesn't it? Ashad would have made a brilliant three-parter just about him, you know, and the Doctor kind of meeting, and maybe he meets them in Haunting of Ladadati, maybe he's like the butler or something like that, and he gets converted. That means that we have some kind of connection to him. You have a bit of his backstory, and possibly he lives, you know, down in the quarters with his family, that kind of stuff. Now, I'm not saying that they would kill his family if we were introduced to them, but I mean, something like that would have been really cool. And then throughout the story of episode 2, you see him kind of building up his armor. And then part 3, you have the full Cyberman. He gets out of, you know, the fire, and he is like this fully built, converted Cyberman that's very distinct and pretty menacing for the final battle. All that kind of stuff would have been amazing. The Doctor and the Master talking to each other at the beginning of The Timeless Children are excellent scenes, and I really like those two's chemistry together. And I think that they're something that they could have explored more of, and I really wouldn't have minded a kind of Master takes over the world, Master takes over Gallifrey with the Cybermasters kind of story. You've got Jack, the Fugitive Doctor, all of that could have sort of stuff could have made some amazing plots. And yet Chibnall's idea was to throw them all into one. So what I think I was getting confused by when I jumped from liking it to not liking it to thinking it was alright and that all that kind of stuff was actually because I was picking different things each time. So first time I would go through and it was the arc, and I didn't like the arc. I felt like it was badly executed, all that kind of stuff. And then the second time around I watched it, I enjoyed the Cybermasters and their idea. I mean, they're a bit weak, but at the same time, they're still pretty cool. And then you have the idea of Gallifrey destruction, Ashad, all of that, and the potential of that could all have, been different watches. So each time I've picked on something different that I've liked, or disliked, depending on the arc. And I think that because all of them were crushed together, none of them got the space to breathe. None of them really worked particularly well because they couldn't get the timing right. The time never went onto anything at all. They devoted themselves to everything that they ended up not getting anything. That sounds like a really weird statement and sounds kind of philosophical, but I just think it makes sense. I mean, as a whole, I like to watch it. Maybe I like to hate watch it, but I see a lot of potential in there, and maybe that's also why I watch it. Because if I focus on the stuff I like, I can have a good time even if I'm not really paying attention. Hopefully with Series 13's kind of stripped back approach with only 7 episodes, I think it is, including a special, and all that kind of stuff, maybe they could do something that feels more consistent, or maybe they just focus on one idea instead of or like 7. If you're confused about all the stuff I've said, you should be, because the episode itself that I'm talking about is very complicated, and because of that I think that it means that you have a very scrambled plot and you have a very scrambled video talking about it in return. But I think I've done it justice this time. So what do you think of the Town of Children and the sort of 3 episodes surrounding it? Do you agree with my point? And try to be nice in the comments with other people's opinions. But anyway, thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you did enjoy this video. If you did, make sure you give it a like, subscribe if you're new, and I shall see you soon.